Welcome to The Fix,
the new way to get your copy reviewed by two former copy chiefs.
because whether you're an aspiring copywriter or you've been in the industry for decades,
The best way to improve your work isn't to read books, blog posts, or online guides.
it's to see real writing, your writing, being reviewed and improved in front of your eyes.
And that's the goal of The Fix, to bring you inside a virtual writer's room
And watch along as we review, edit and rewrite real copy.
from real writers like you. So let's get straight into this week's episode. And remember, if you like what you see here,
Please share The Fix with anyone you think would find it valuable. It is completely free. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Fix. Today we're taking on something of a challenge that was sent in to us by a reader who asked us to talk about the concept of a marketing gauntlet. So it's not a specific piece of copy that we're reviewing, but we're talking about, I suppose, a format or a part of the industry within which we all work, and we're going to give our different ways of thinking about gauntlets. So I think perhaps I should kind of set the table a little bit in case that's a term that's unfamiliar to you. So there are all sorts of gauntlets that can be written. The one that we're going to talk about generally is one that would lead to a sale. So in general, a gauntlet would work like this. Somebody signs up for a free email or enters their email address somewhere. You are trying to sell them your services or your product, and you're going to sequence a series of emails which will be triggered automatically when they sign up. That's a gauntlet. So it could be 100 emails, it could be 2 emails. Usually they're about a week long, and then you drop into the general marketing sends or the general editorial sends, or both. Now there are, within that, you do get after sales gauntlets. So somebody has bought something and then they receive a series of emails after that sale. We're not going to talk about that today. We're just going to talk about leading up to that sale. So you establish contact with a potential customer, and you're going to write to them in a structured way, in a way that hopefully leads to a sale. Now, all of that is a good way of introducing the fact that I am not an expert in gauntlets, so
I'm absolutely gutted that I haven't got a glove to which I can stand up and just throw down a glove.
Yeah.
I watched a film the other day, The Last Duel. There's no real need to watch the film, it wasn't good, but it had Adam Driver in it, and I do like Adam Driver. But he literally throws down a gauntlet, and all I could see while he was saying that was that moment, and I'm just really annoyed.
A branded glove.
Yeah, anyway, can I ask?
Yeah, go on. Because this is going to be fairly loose, because I don't think either of us are. There are people who are experts at gauntlets, and that's not us.
This is the thing, because gauntlets, language in copywriting, when you actually get into the marketing, is like, oh God, like save me, like what's going on? I'll ask you this first, just to throw it up. It might get us on the wrong track, but I will do it anyway. How do you see a gauntlet compared to a funnel?
No, I don't. This can go in the show reel. This is one for the marketers.
No, but I just think, because I'm thinking about every time I click into LinkedIn or something like that, I'll see funnels and like some terrible person going, I'm going to get your funnel sorted and all this kind of, and you're saying, oh my God, shoot me.
Okay, well,
Is the sales process, like you might have different levels of sales within a funnel, whereas a gauntlet is usually a welcome series to something, is how I would probably try and define that.
I think that's fair. You could probably add in another little layer to it, which is a funnel might sell me more than one product. Mm-hmm. It might upsell, downsell, cross-sell. There's all sorts of different products going on, whereas a gauntlet tends to lead to the sale of one thing.
There you go. We will call that the definition. That will, in years to come, it will come back to this episode.
Well,
and will be the definition.
I'm not an expert in gauntlets, but I'm definitely not an expert in funnels. I don't mean to belittle the format in any way. It's just not what I'm necessarily good at. However, I've written enough gauntlets and worked on enough of them to at least have something to say about them. And for people who don't have a gauntlet in place and are collecting names, or whether it's a sign up to a Facebook page or a prospect, cold prospect, warm prospect, sign up somewhere on their website. You do want to talk to them in a way that starts that conversation and leads towards a conversion, because, well, it's one way that we tighten up our sales process, because not every product can be sold to somebody the very first time they encounter it. As copywriters, that's our golden ticket. If we can write a piece of sales copy or a video or whatever it might be that goes to somebody who's never heard of us before and generates a sale at the end of it, then that's fantastic. That's what will earn the most money writing probably. Sure. But we also know that if it's a very, very high priced product, a complicated product or whatever it might be, maybe we can't get that sale straight away. So it's a different skill to be able to get that sale.
And I think for me, when you talk about gauntlets and what have you, what I think about, and let's use that as a working definition, it's to introduce and get to the point of sale in a natural way. But I think the person, when they emailed and said about, give us some examples of how to do a good gauntlet, a good welcome series kind of thing. For me, the number one thing, and this is obvious, but we'll use it as a base point to go off maybe, it's about establishing trust. It's massively, like, at the forefront of your mind as the copywriter. Now, a marketing team might come and say, we want this many emails or what have you. I'd try and work with them and say, well, actually, we need to put, if they're suggesting 3, you might need 5 to do a certain thing. You will find out, in a minute, I'll tell you what the next bit, but you'll come to and try and define that with them. But the first thing, above all else, you have got to establish trust very quickly. That's what you're trying to do ultimately, as quickly as possible. So use that in your mind. What I would say for what would make so what is a good gauntlet? It's one that introduces your business, your product very, very quickly in a trustworthy way that potentially leads the prospect to become a buyer within that process. So that's what a good one would do. So how would you go about filling that email series with content? I think what people probably don't do as much, certainly in my experience of this, is they think, and I'm guilty of it myself, but they think of it as a greatest hits opportunity of we've got, this is what we do, this is it's like an extended about us page, and then it's we also have this, did you know we have this and this kind of thing. Whereas actually I think the best gauntlets that I've seen most effective, in the same way a freestanding promotion would be, in the same way an actual email piece would be, it's all based around an idea. There needs to be a theme to it. And I think that is where a lot of people make the mistake of just doing a greatest hits and introducing us and giving us some random content, like our best pieces of content kind of thing. I think on one of my email lists has a kind of, read this because this is one of the best pieces of content we've done kind of thing. Whereas actually, I think you want to have a thematic gauntlet. Again, you can then test different gauntlets against each other and what theme works better. But I think the first thing, you're looking to establish trust, but how do you do that around a specific theme that links to maybe the product, or links to your business itself?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. I mean, the way I would think about it sort of builds on that. I think of a gauntlet just like a deconstructed sales letter. Yeah. So I would, you need to mix in engagement, right? And I'm throwing engagement out there like a bit of a buzzword, but if we've got a sales letter, we're going to try and write that so that there's no moment you drift off. We're going to try and go from A to sale, A to B, without the reader really breaking away from that idea. We're going to really now we can't do that across a gauntlet because by definition they go off and do something else and then they get the next email 2 days later or 3 days later or 24 hours later or whatever. So we've got to keep them coming back. So I'll come back to that in a second. But fundamentally, a gauntlet, let's say it's a 5-part gauntlet, I would think, well, what are the 5 key elements of a sales letter? So the story, the credibility, social proof, scientific proof, whatever those elements might be. So it might be track record, credentials, past examples of the trades working. I'm going to, mostly think about it in terms of finance, obviously. The backstory of the editor, the problem it solves. There might be 10 different things you've got going on. Now, you might not want to do 10 emails, but you can then start to think, right, well, maybe if I started with our credentials, then I talked about some past trades, then I bring the story in, and then I like to think about it like that. Now, you can mix and match, and you can't really work out there's no rule about what order that would be.
No.
But there are elements that all great promotions have within them. So you map them onto a. So rather than going down the page, they go across in terms of time.
Sure.
That's how I think about it. So don't overcomplicate things. What boxes do you need to tick to get your sale? What things do you need to say? And what questions do you need to answer? Right, how do I do that? That's job one. You're obviously not going to sell quite so hard because you're bringing somebody into the environment by which you want to lead to a sale. So if you try and sell to them every day, hammer them up, you could generate enough sales to make your funnel work. I've used the wrong word there. Your gauntlet work. You can make the ROI all add up in the right way. But you also run the risk of them kind of thinking, oh, I'm not going to open the next email because all he's doing is selling. So you want to mix some entertainment and some value into there. So I kind of think about the key elements of the promotion, and then I maybe get a bit more discursive. So rather than tell an 8-line story, I might write an essay about something interesting because they think, oh, well, if they go away thinking that was interesting and it promised me something at the end in the next day, so it linked across, I'll open that next email and then, see what I mean? So you're kind of broadening it out in a way, but fundamentally, selling is selling. So the techniques that you use to get the sale on day one are the same fundamental points you're going to hit that you're going to work with over 5 days. If you get it right, it's a much nicer way to be sold to, because at the end of 5 days, your reader thinks, well, I've learned about the product, I know what the offer is, these guys seem credible, there's a lot of proof that this works, and maybe then they think, yeah, I'll give this a go.
I think it's a really important point that you make, which might be obvious, but the amount of gauntlets I receive and test on, and by the way, I feel like this might be a little side note of if you don't already, create a seed account. Because it's a really useful thing.
What account?
A seed account. So set up a basic Nick O'Connor in a bin, gmail.com, and just sign up for every email, newsletter and everything. Keep it in your private account, otherwise you'll go insane and your phone's beeping all the time with all this stuff.
Yeah.
But just have a seed account that you put there, and then you will see these gauntlets and you'll see what's going. And a lot of people always say, how do I find this stuff? And you can't really get around just signing up for it, but just do a seed account so that you can kind of keep that private. But my point was going to be what you said actually is that the key thing about a gauntlet as well, as I say, I would try and have a theme. So actually, first of all, what do you want to tell them? As you say, with the credibility, what are the elements of a sales process that you want to get across? I would try and put that into a theme, so there's a thread,
a controlling idea,
and then never underestimate or never forget. This is the perhaps obvious, but again, not actually executed very well or very often. Make it each one needs to link to each other, which is what you're suggesting, and I think that's really important. A lot of people will just send welcome email number 1, welcome email number 2, and there's no narrative within the emails themselves. I think you need to treat it like as you would the vertical sales page, where you've got to get from one line to the next. As you go horizontal in this idea, you need to get from one email to the next, and you need to link that as strongly as you can. You need to give incentive to open the next.
Even if it's a little mystery, like you show a chart and you say, I know I've been telling you about my background today, but tomorrow I'm going to explain why this stock went up 400% in a day, or whatever. You say more on that tomorrow.
What I also do, it's a technical detail, but I think a helpful one, and I certainly used to do this a lot, but because you've got a slightly higher chance of that person being engaged in the gauntlet, you assume, and you know what's coming next, you can give them the subject line of the next one. So you might be able to actually say, you're going to see this subject line in your next email, look out for this particular subject line, rather than say, look out for my email next week. You can say, look out for this particular thing. So again, it's just linking a little bit stronger to that next email, so you're giving yourself the best chance of getting that engagement continuing through that. So I would do that as a little PS or what have you, and just actually signpost that next email. But do think, how do I get from this email to that email? Why do I want to keep reading this? What is the incentive there? You also said about engagement, and you said it as a buzzword. I get really irate when people say, oh, I hate the word engagement, because it's all over LinkedIn and Twitter, and I say, oh, stupid engagement. when words become cliches, I understand why, but like engagement is the most important thing in advertising. Of course it is. Like you can't say it's a buzzword. I know you're not saying it is a buzzword, but you can't just disregard the concept of engagement because everybody says it. It is simply one of the most important things. I think with a Gauntlet, because you are creating, again, what was the first thing we think about? Trust. You are trying to create trust. How do you create trust? You develop a relationship. How do you develop a relationship? It's a two-way thing. This is an opportunity. Someone's engaged with you to be receiving that Gauntlet. They have engaged with their relationship, so you need to open as early as you can a two-way dialogue. I think that's a tautology there, but anyway, you need to get that dialogue going because and asking them questions like, what did they think about that? Email me, tell me your thoughts. Like, what are you looking for? How would you like this to go? Even if you already know the answers and what you're going to provide, get them to lead you towards that together. I think that's a key element of Gauntlets that, again, a lot of people forget. They just go, here's our best hits, or here's the thing.
Well, the difficulty is as well that I don't think there are any hard and fast rules because, so for instance, one of the big conversations you have when you're putting a Gauntlet together is when do we ask for the sale? When do we push the sale? Now, if you've got a piece of copy that's just so brilliant at converting, then early, put it in straight away because ultimately you want to generate a sale. But that's so dependent on the copy itself that it will skew the results of the Gauntlet. So sometimes you go on day one of a Gauntlet and you keep selling all the way through. So the emails are just linking to the same promotion because you just know that piece of copy is just fantastic. It converts. And the Gauntlets, you can be clever. You can give value, have different lengths of email. Some are short and punchy and salesy. Some are a bit more discursive and editorial. That can work. But equally, sometimes the reader just is not ready to buy from you on day one, no matter, or your promotion doesn't work well enough on day one, so you have to hold it back and you have to say, this person needs to spend 5 days, 7 days, 10 days hearing from us. You have to work out the best time. Sure. And the only way to work that out is through testing. And anybody that says, we did it, we should just always do it on day one, it's like, well, you can start there, but what if it doesn't work? Yeah. Try it on day 5, try it on day 10. You've got to let your market tell you how they want to respond to your product.
Sure, there's two simultaneous things and you get a little bit of push, a little bit of a confrontation between them. You've got the marketing side where a good marketing team will test the Gauntlet, and if they start with the sale on day 7, they'll be testing, bringing it forward, and what have you. And you've got to do that. And if the market is buying on day 1, happy days.
Yeah, you don't have a problem.
Yeah. That said, there is the other side of a Gauntlet. Again, it is developing trust to sell. Ultimately, we're in the business selling. But it does have a more philosophical question of a Gauntlet is is ultimately going to be how you're perceived as a business, as a person, as a company, or what have you. So there is that element that, aside from the fact, if you as a person don't like the idea of selling on day 1, if it's your business, then it's your choice to not sell on day 1. But just think about how will I be perceived with this information that's going out, and that's your call. Like it's depending on a business. Again, I'm saying what's the aim of a Gauntlet for me, I'd say it's to develop trust. But then that's because I think in long-term goals, and I know that the more trust I have now, the more I'll sell in the future.
It's the beginnings of a relationship that will lead one day to a sale.
Yes. So
when that day is variable.
Yeah, and it is up to you ultimately. So always remember that. But that said, as I say, there'll be situations where if you're coming on board for certain things, you might just want the product straight away, or that might be the thing. So always be testing it.
But it depends on price and market and all sorts of things. So if you're a B2B company, you're probably not going to ask them to buy your services on day 1 because you're probably going to want to start a conversation with them. So maybe if you're in that market, it's more important to introduce who you are as a person. I'll be the person that you would talk to if you wanted to work with us. Some case studies, keep it interesting, keep it relevant. Maybe go slightly highbrow because you're selling to a sort of different kind of business. But then again, I don't know, if I was setting up a website for you, the Glenn Fisher, I might say, well, you've written a book, maybe people will be interested in buying your book. It's going to be much cheaper. It's not going to be like a huge contract with a business. It's going to be a consumer item. So I'd put that a lot earlier, probably put it in day one because then we've signed up. Do you want to read my book? And I'll carry on using that example because it's a relevant one. Let's say they didn't buy your book on day one. I'm like, all right, well,
Just unsubscribe them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll go around to their house. Yeah. No, day two, I might give them a free chapter.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so you didn't want it, fine. That's fine, but I've still got something to offer you, so I'll give you something for free.
Yeah.
And then maybe you share a review on day 3, and maybe you share a testimonial on day 4. And then you say, I know you didn't want it earlier in the week, but here's just another chance you can get hold of a copy of my book now. That's a gauntlet. Do you know what I mean? And it had a sale at the start and at the end, but you're just thinking about where they might be and the different elements that you would want anyway.
I think as well, we're throwing a load of things, but it's just things to think about. But the best gauntlets as well, again, because you have got a slightly more engaged audience, they're in your world now. They're in your email list.
You're in control of the conversation.
People tend to get complacent and will open emails with a lot of exposition and be like, "Hi there, I'm writing you today to tell you about da 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 da," and not thinking how they would have on the front end, trying to attract people. I think with a gauntlet, you've still got to have that discipline and make it an interesting read. People will too often just resort to not deleting that opening line and leading with all the exposition. Every email, whether it's a cold email or an email in a gauntlet, is still fighting with a million other emails. And never forget that, like, our inboxes are nightmarish places, and mine certainly, and I know everybody else's. Like, you need to work. You do need to think about how you open it. Like, be engaging. Start in the middle of the story. Start in the middle of the thing.
Or give value. So for instance, an example. So we've done 2 episodes on the Hesed chairs. Mm-hmm. Which, if you haven't seen, you can go back and check out those episodes. But they are chairs designed for people who've got a bad back. Okay, if I was building a gauntlet there, one of the emails in that gauntlet, I don't know where it's going to go yet, but I would probably want to do, why does your back hurt? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, just talk about this is why you got a bad back. Don't worry about the sale in that email. Just explain it, because you're authoritative then. But also the person clearly cares about that. They're on the file for the file being the list. They're on the file for a reason. So, okay, you can give that person something of value to them by explaining that. And all of these things help build that relationship, build that trust. Maybe then you start to talk about how, well, tomorrow I can explain how our product actually addresses those specific issues. And then the next day it's, well, let me tell you a bit about myself. And then you end that email by saying, tomorrow I'm going to give you a 1-day offer to save money on whatever, whatever it might be. It's a sales promotion. It's just delivered over a few days.
I'm thinking of like questions people will ask about gauntlets, and people will inevitably say, how long should it be? How long is a piece of string? You do it as long as you can add value, as long as the email means something. Try never to send an email out, whether it's a gauntlet or an email. That doesn't need to go. Like, the world of social media has made us like aware that we have to like post things and send it more than ever. Like, that's a worry. But you need, like, no one is really waiting for that stuff. Like, they're not there. No. Like, you have to go and give them a reason to engage with that item. So how long should your gauntlet be? How much do you need to tell people? And then stop them, respect them. Then you can drop down. So another thing people might do, is it all 3 consecutive days? Maybe you might do 3 days consecutive and then have a break, and then it becomes every week. And then you might have a 99-day, after 99 days go, oh, by the way, there's this thing. It is working closely with marketing to understand the lifetime of a subscriber, where they are. If you know that people tend to stop engaging after a certain time, drop in a really far out email in the gauntlet that brings people back in. Hey, I've noticed you've like not been as interested. I'm sorry, I didn't realize this. Have you seen this? What have you? So just, I'm thinking of quick questions that people have of like, oh, should it be this long or whatever. You need to learn yourself. It can be as long as it, but lead with the principles of, does it provide value, which will build trust and therefore and therefore develop the relationship. If it's not doing if it's not leading to that, it's certainly not going to be leading to a sale. So don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't bother people.
And I suppose the golden rule beyond and above all of that stuff is you almost certainly won't write it, the final gauntlet the first time. It's iterative, to use the terrible tech phrase. You know, write one, put it out, measure it, see what's working, look at your open rates. One of the great things about a gauntlet once it's running is you can say, oh look, day 4, the subject the open rate is 20% lower than all the other days. Well, let's change that. Yeah. You can iterate on it, change it, tweak it, and over time the market will tell you, okay, actually for our product and our price range and our promotional style, about day 10 is where we want to, where that's where most people buy. Okay, well let's make sure that there's an email on day 9, 10 and 11, right? Then you don't have to do all the way through every day, but if that's where the reader buys or the prospect buys, great, you know, target them a little bit more around them, but just put something together, get it out and then monitor it. I think that's the golden rule, because you never get it right first time. You never do. And ultimately the market tells you where you know, what will work and how things will work best for them. So don't overthink these things. So think about it like it's a sales promotion, because it is. Yep. You're building trust, you're building a relationship. It will be different for every product, so don't let anybody, you know, you can start with what somebody suggested, but you're going to change things over time. I think those are that's how I would approach writing a gauntlet. Sure. Perhaps we can get somebody in who's, God knows if there are any, you know, actual gauntlet experts out there, people who actually just write gauntlets for a living. Perhaps there are.
There probably are, I should think.
Well, if you are a gauntlet expert and you want to write in, get in touch, you can come on. And you can tell us why we were wrong about everything.
You can literally come in and throw the gauntlet down.
You can throw the gauntlet down to us. Yeah. We will. Do you pick the gauntlet up? Do we accept the gauntlet? I think if you accept the duel, if you accept the gauntlet, then you are accepting it. Yeah, fair. Okay, so it will be thrown down for us. We will accept it, yes, and then we'll talk about.
Yes.
Anyway, if you are an expert in this field, or you've got another way of doing things, or something that you think we're wrong about, right about, want to expand on, always get in touch with us and you can come on the show and we'll add your viewpoint into the mix. But I think, Glenn, I've said everything I've got to say about gauntlets. Anything more you want to contribute?
No.
No.
I've said that as though maybe there is. But no.
No, I think I do enjoy...
Actually, there is one
Go
thing.
on.
There is one thing. And because I've left my pregnant no to incubate for so long, be aware of the fact that it is going out at different times for different people and different experiences. Don't try to be too clever to make it feel like it is that moment. Or if you are, just be very aware.
People will know it's a gauntlet.
And you need to just be aware of that. There's obviously different ways. Obviously, if people have got gauntlets that they are struggling with and there's an email that's just not working, send that in and we'll have a look at it. But that is often, it feels like, oh, this has been sent to me automatically. There's a fine balance between figuring that out.
Well, ultimately, it exposes a lack of authenticity, which will always be there to a certain extent.
Just be aware of that. Yeah. It's difficult to give a tip without being specific on specific copy, but just be aware that these are going out at different times to different people. I think that's all I've got to say on gauntlets.
Good. Thank you very much to the person that sent that question challenge in. Like we've said before, you can send a piece of your copy, work in progress, in and we'll review it. Or we're happy to look at issues like this. So if you're having a problem writing a gauntlet, therefore you don't actually have any copy to review, but you want us to talk about here's how you might approach doing that, then we're happy to. So please do send in writing challenges or questions for us to tackle if you so wish. For now, though, let's wrap up today's episode. Glenn, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you much, everyone at home, and we'll see you again. Goodbye.
And there we have it. We hope you got something valuable out of today's episode of The Fix.
Maybe it sparked an idea or two for your next writing project. Maybe it triggered a new headline, opening line, or story to tell your reader.
Maybe it inspired you to scrap what you have and start over. Or maybe it made you want to submit your current work in progress for a little constructive feedback. If that is the case, send your copy to us at feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Or if you don't want us to review a specific piece of writing, send us a problem you're trying to solve
or a challenge you want input on, and we'll do our best to help.
And remember, if you like The Fix, please do share it with other writers, business owners, and marketers.